Hey YouTube, Josh Roof with Golden Ratio Content, and today's quick tip will answer the questions, what is imagery and what are some good examples of imagery? So the textbook definition, as well as the definition that pops up on Google when you search for it, is visually descriptive or figurative language, especially in a literary work, which is kind of lame. I think that PsychCentral.com does a little bit better of a job at explaining what it really is. They say that imagery is a flow of thoughts that you can see, hear, feel, smell, or taste. That said, let's take a look at some examples of imagery from a few classical writers and some modern writers as well. For sight, let's go with J.K. Rowling. One good description in Harry Potter is, "She was inflating like a monstrous balloon." Another quote from Harry Potter is, "Harry looked into the shadowed eyes of Sirius Black, the only part of the sunken face that seemed alive." Eyes are often used in conjunction with imagery. Here's another example from Jane Austen's Emma. Her eyes, a deep gray, with dark eyelashes and eyebrows, had never been denied their praise. But the skin, which she had been used to cavil at, I have no idea what that means, as wanting color, had a clearness and delicacy which really needed no fuller bloom. Now let's take a look at sound imagery. This is a quote from George Orwell. "It seemed to him that he knew exactly what it felt like to sit in a room like this, in an armchair beside an open fire with your feet in the fender and a kettle on the hob, utterly alone, utterly secure, with nobody watching you, no voice pursuing you, no sound except the singing of the kettle and the friendly ticking of the clock." That's a quote from 1984, by the way. Moving on to touch imagery. Robert Frost, I've got a couple quotes here from Robert Frost. The first is from The Death of the Hired Man. "Mary touches the harp-like morning glory strings and plays some tenderness." The next is from The Witch of Coos. "The bed linens might just as well be ice and the clothes snow." For the use of smell in imagery, let's go with a quote from C.S. Lewis. In The Silver Chair, C.S. Lewis writes, "The sweet, heavy smell grew very much less, for though the whole fire had not been put out, a good bit of it had, and what remained smelled very largely of burnt marshwiggle, which is not at all an enchanting smell. The marshwiggle, if you haven't read The Silver Chair, is a humanoid creature with frog-like skin and feet. So if you can imagine the smell of a burnt frog, basically, that's what he's going for here." Last of all, we have the example of using taste in the realm of imagery. And Stephen King, not my favorite author by far, but he's just absolutely phenomenal when it comes to symbolism and imagery, especially. Stephen King gives us some great advice on improving imagery, he says, see everything before you write it. See everything before you write it. In The Shining, King uses the word red rum for the symbol of bloodshed and violence. It's also a good example of imagery. Rum is a drink that, in my opinion, tastes a bit like death. Rum is really only red in this case, where murder and blood is involved. Spelled backwards, of course, it's murder. If the reader realizes these two things consciously or subconsciously, King has successfully painted a vivid, albeit violent picture and capitalized on the taste aspect of imagery. And that's all I have for you today. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, learned something, or even enjoyed one tiny smidge of detail in this daily tip, like below and subscribe if you want.